Harold parks his old car in front of his son William's house, observing with a tired expression the two-story home where his son lives with his family. The clock reads nearly noon, but the silence weighs heavy in the air. Harold takes a deep breath, trying to gather courage, while he runs a trembling hand through his white hair, as if adjusting his appearance could somehow prepare him for what lies ahead. He feels his heart beat a little harder, maybe because of his age or the uncertainty of the reception. As he rings the doorbell, the metallic sound echoes, and for a moment, Harold almost hopes no one answers. However, the door soon opens, and William appears with a closed expression, barely hiding his impatience. He crosses his arms, looks his father up and down, and without saying a word, steps back to let Harold in, though without the slightest hint of welcome. Harold enters slowly, aware that the slightest movement could further provoke his son's resentment. Observing the new furniture, the framed photos, and the modern details of the decor, Harold feels like a complete stranger there. The silence is broken by William's firm voice, who wastes no time on pleasantries. "To what do I owe the honor, Dad? We haven't seen each other in so long. I thought you'd forgotten the way here." Harold lowers his gaze, feeling the weight of guilt for never being the father William wanted. He tries to respond gently, but the words come out hesitantly. I just wanted to see how you're all doing. I missed everyone, especially you." Harold's tone is almost pleading, but William remains unmoved. Instead, a bitter smile forms on his lips, full of irony and resentment. "You missed me? Do you know how ignored I've been all these years? Every time I try to get close, you shut me out, Dad. I just wanted someone to show me what it was like to have a real family." William's voice turns grave, and Harold feels each word like a knife driven into his conscience. He tries to justify himself, saying he did the best he could with the little he had, but William is not swayed. Always the same excuse, right? As if a lack of money justified the lack of affection, of attention. "You simply gave up on me, and now, after all this time, you show up expecting what? That I'd welcome you with open arms?" William's tone begins to rise, and Harold feels cornered, but he makes one last attempt. "I know I made mistakes, but I'm here to make things right. There's still time for us to start over." William, his face twisted in frustration, steps forward and points to the door. "Start over? It's too late now, Dad. I built this life on my own, without you. You don't have the right to just show up and think everything will go back to the way it was. There's no place for you here." Harold feels the impact of each word and realizes he's about to be thrown out. With a heavy heart, he looks at his son, but something inside stops him from replying. He realizes that he may have truly lost the chance to be the father William needed, and in silence, he turns toward the door, accepting the bitter farewell. As he turns his back on his son, Harold feels the weight of humiliation with each step toward the exit. His hand is already on the doorknob, but something inside him snaps. He stops, looks back, and sees William standing there, arms crossed and with a look of disdain. Years of pent-up anger make Harold feel an uncontrollable urge to defend himself, to finally say everything that has been buried inside him. He lets go of the door and walks back to the center of the room. William, surprised, watches as his father raises his voice for the first time. The calm restraint fades into a hoarse, almost pained tone. "I know you blame me, William, and maybe I deserve it. But do you think life was easy for me? I did everything I could with what little I had. How many nights did I stay awake, wondering how to pay the bills, how to put food on the table for you and your mother?" Harold pauses, clearly overcome by emotion. William, however, remains unmoved. Instead, he steps forward, his eyes burning with resentment. "And what does that change, Dad? You think money is an excuse for abandoning me? All I needed was a father who was there, but you were never around. I had to learn everything on my own." William's voice trembles between desperation and resentment, revealing the weight of words he seems to have held back his entire life. The tension rises as they stand face to face, both deeply wounded by old hurts. Harold shakes his head, incredulous, trying to find words for a son who seems unwilling to hear him. I tried to be there, but nothing I did seemed to be enough. When your mother got sick, I carried everything on my shoulders. I thought you understood, that you knew how much I was sacrificing. But now I see you never wanted to understand." William interrupts him with a bitter laugh. "You're really playing the victim, aren't you? As if I didn't know about your escapes to the bar, about the days when I had to pretend everything was fine because you wouldn't come home. It wasn't just the lack of money. It was your lack of courage to face your own family." Harold closes his eyes, painfully remembering the times when drinking was his refuge, his only way of escaping frustrations that crushed him. But admitting this to his son is something he can't bring himself to do. Instead, Harold responds in a steady voice, trying to hold onto the pride he has left. "I may not have been the father you wanted, but I was the best I could be. And maybe, just maybe, you blame me for everything that went wrong in your life." Furious, William loses control. "The best you could be? Don't give me excuses, Dad. I had to become a man without you. And now you show up thinking you have the right to be part of my life? Go away. I don't need you here, and neither does my family." William's voice echoes through the room, a shout that leaves Harold stunned. He realizes that the love he still holds for his son is not enough to erase the bitterness or heal the wounds they both carry. Head down, Harold finally understands that there's nothing left to say. He walks away in silence, his presence diminishing until the door closes with a heavy sound, like the end of a chapter that didn't get the ending he had hoped for. Harold leaves the house with a heavy heart, walking slowly down the sidewalk, still hearing his son's words echo in his mind. The city seems distant, almost unrecognizable. The sound of cars and life around him blend into a hum as he tries to process what just happened. As he turns the corner, he runs into Martha, an old neighbor and longtime friend. Martha had always been a calm and welcoming presence, the kind of person everyone in the neighborhood respected and who, somehow, seemed to understand everyone's pains and secrets. Seeing Harold's lost expression, Martha approaches with a concerned look. "Harold, are you all right? You look so worn out." Harold hesitates for a moment, trying to hold back the tears burning in his eyes. Feeling the need to unburden, he shakes his head and lets the words spill out. "No, Martha, nothing's all right. I just left my son's house, and everything fell apart. He hates me. I failed him. I failed as a father, and now I don't know what to do." Martha listens intently, her gaze full of understanding. She gently places a hand on Harold's shoulder and guides him to a nearby bench, where he sits, feeling vulnerable. Her presence calms him, and he finally lets out a deep sigh, as if releasing a weight he's carried for years. In a soft voice, Martha says, "Sometimes things seem worse before they get better. Maybe he just needs time to process everything he's feeling." Harold nods, still looking defeated. "I don't know if it's just a matter of time, Martha. Maybe I've done too much damage to ever be forgiven. I did all I could, but all he sees are my mistakes. You know, there were moments when I thought about giving up, just disappearing. But something always held me back. I wanted to believe there was still a chance, even a small one, to be part of his life." Martha squeezes Harold's hand firmly, offering her support. "And maybe there still is, Harold. It's never too late to try. Maybe you just need to start differently. Show him that you've changed, that you're ready to be the person he needs." Harold feels a glimmer of hope at her words, though doubt still lingers. He knows that trying to regain his son's respect won't be easy, but he realizes that, for the first time in a long time, he's ready to face his own mistakes. Martha then suggests he write a letter to William, explaining what he never had the courage to say in person. Sometimes, writing gives us the chance to organize our thoughts and show what we feel without the pressure of an immediate response. Maybe it'll help smooth things between you two. Harold considers the idea. He's never been good with words, always more comfortable with quiet actions than expressions of affection. But at the same time, he feels that this might be his last chance to try something genuine. After a few minutes, Harold thanks Martha with a grateful look. The simple conversation with his friend seems to have awakened something in him, a courage he thought he'd lost. As he walks back home, already forming the first lines of the letter in his mind, Harold feels that maybe, just maybe, there's still a sliver of hope to rebuild his relationship with his son. Harold sits at the kitchen table, a pad of paper before him and a pen in hand. He spent hours trying to write the letter Martha suggested, but each attempt results in a mess of scribbled words. His hands tremble, not only from the weight of age, but from uncertainty about what to say. He realizes that writing isn't enough. He needs to be sincere, and sincerity requires courage. With a sigh, he closes his eyes and tries to summon the strength to share everything he's kept buried for so long. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, interrupting his thoughts. He glances at the clock. It's past 10 at night, an unusual hour for visitors. Harold stands, adjusts his glasses, and goes to the door. Upon opening it, he finds two uniformed police officers standing there. Their expressions are serious, and a wave of apprehension washes over him. His heart races, and he grips the door handle a little tighter, as if that small gesture might give him some control over the situation. "Mr. Harold Richards?" one of the officers asks. Harold nods, trying to hide the nervousness building in his chest. "Yes, that's me. Is there a problem?" The younger officer exchanges a quick look with his colleague and then turns back to Harold, his expression serious but gentle. "Mr. Richards, we need you to come with us to your son William's house. There's been an incident, and we believe your presence could help." Harold's face loses some color at the mention of his son's name. 1,000 scenarios flash through his mind. An accident, a health issue, something too severe for him to even imagine. Without question, Harold grabs his coat and follows the officers, trying to keep control of his emotions. The drive to his son's house feels endless, each minute filled with guesses and fears that make him feel small and powerless. He wonders if something happened to his grandchildren, to William's wife, but the lack of answers only increases his anxiety. When they arrive, he sees emergency lights reflected in the windows of his son's house, and his apprehension turns into dread. Harold steps out of the car and takes in the scene. The officers guide him to the door, and he sees William sitting on the couch, his face pale and hands trembling. Beside him, an officer is taking notes, and William looks completely shaken, his gaze lost and filled with fear. When he sees his father, William hesitates, his eyes reflecting a mix of relief and shame. Harold feels a sharp pang in his chest upon seeing his son's condition, something he never imagined witnessing. One of the officers approaches Harold and explains quietly, "Mr. Richards, there was a report involving your son. It seems he's caught up in a complicated situation, and given the gravity, we thought he might calm down with you here." Still in shock, Harold nods slowly, trying to process everything that's happening. He approaches his son, sits beside him on the couch, and without saying a word, places a hand on William's shoulder. The silent connection between them feels like a fragile thread that has survived despite so many breaks. With a voice barely audible, William finally addresses his father, as if he's reached the end of his pride and endurance. "Dad, I didn't know what to do. I got involved in something I can't fix on my own. I thought I could get out of it, but now everything seems to be falling apart." William's words reveal the vulnerability he's always tried to hide, and Harold feels his son's pain as if it were his own. Without removing his hand from William's shoulder, he responds softly, "I'm here, son. We'll face this together, one step at a time." Sitting beside William, Harold watches his son in silence, respecting the time he needs to speak. William's expression shifts between regret and tension, as if each word he is about to say carries an almost unbearable weight. After a few minutes, William takes a deep breath and begins to speak, hesitant, his gaze fixed somewhere distant in the room, avoiding his father's eyes. "Dad, I went too far. I thought I could handle everything on my own, but I couldn't." William's voice is low, almost a whisper, and the words come out with difficulty. He starts confessing a series of decisions he made over the last few years, choices that led him into a spiral of financial and professional troubles. Trying to hold on to his pride, William took risks on ventures without planning and ended up with debts he could never pay off. Harold listens to every word with a mixture of concern and empathy, keeping his gaze steady and focused, signaling that he's there for his son, without judgment. William, still unable to look his father in the eye, adds bitterly, "And to cover those holes, I ended up trusting the wrong people." He falls silent for a moment, his face clouded with shame. "I got involved in businesses that I now realize are illegal, and I can't get out. Every attempt I made to fix my mistakes only sank me deeper, Dad. I don't know what else to do. I feel trapped with no way out." Harold feels a tightness in his chest at the sound of desperation in his son's voice. The anger he once felt is replaced by deep compassion, a paternal instinct he hasn't felt in a long time. He recalls his own mistakes, the nights he tried to numb his pain with alcohol, the moments he too felt caught in a cycle of poor choices. Without a second thought, Harold turns and holds his son's hands, gripping them firmly. "William, listen to me. I know what it's like to feel like everything's lost, but you're not alone. Not anymore. Let's figure out a way to deal with this together, and I'll be by your side every step of the way." Harold's words seem to crack William's armor, and for the first time, he looks up at his father. William's eyes are filled with tears, and he seems surprised to realize that Harold isn't judging him but offering him support. Unable to hold back, William shakes his head, defeated. "Dad, I don't know how I got here. I thought I could do everything without needing anyone. Now I see I was wrong. I needed you. I needed help." Harold feels the impact of these words, as if they were a truth buried between them for years, only now coming to light. He realizes that the distance between him and his son was fueled not only by his own failures as a father, but also by William's pride in refusing to show weakness. In this moment of mutual vulnerability, Harold senses that, despite everything, there is still hope for rebuilding. "Son, this is the first time in a long while you've allowed me to be here. And I promise, I won't let you face this alone anymore. I learned the hard way that when we hit rock bottom, we need to reach out. And that's exactly what we're doing now together." Harold and William sit side by side, still processing everything that's been revealed. The silence between them is dense, but unlike before. It's no longer filled with resentment and bitterness. Now, both seem to understand that each word spoken, each secret unveiled, has brought a small but valuable closeness. William hunches over on the couch, his eyes fixed on the floor, as if trying to hide the weight of his own regret. Harold notices his son's worn state and decides to break the silence with a memory. "I remember you as a kid, William, building your toy inventions from whatever you found around the house. You were always so independent. Even when I tried to help, you'd tell me you could handle it alone." He lets out a gentle laugh, without bitterness, just nostalgia. "I should have understood better back then, but I think, at the time, I was so wrapped up in my own problems that I only saw what was right in front of me." William looks at his father, surprised by the memory. There's a vulnerability in his expression, as if he's transported back to childhood, a time when his father was still a mix of admiration and dependency. He takes a deep breath, preparing to reveal a feeling he's kept buried. "I grew up thinking I needed to prove myself, Dad, that you'd only respect me if I did everything on my own. I never wanted to admit I needed help because I thought that would only disappoint you more." Harold absorbs these words with a mix of sadness and understanding. He realizes his son struggled alone not just under the pressure of being an adult, but because he needed recognition and acceptance from him. A knot forms in Harold's throat, and he feels an urgency to apologize in a way he maybe never has. "William, I failed you. I failed by not being present, by letting my frustrations overshadow your well-being. And I regret it every single day." William's eyes fill with tears, and he tries to hide it, but the pain finally breaks through. He shakes his head slowly, as if he can't quite believe he's hearing these words from his father. "I was wrong too, Dad. I did everything I could to push you away, out of anger, out of pride, out of thinking you didn't deserve to know anything about my life." He pauses, swallows hard, and lets out a heavy sigh. "Now I see that while I tried to distance myself from you, I ended up tying myself more tightly to the very mistakes I swore I'd never make." The impact of these revelations hits them both, and for the first time in years, William no longer feels the weight of resentment in his chest. Instead, he feels something he barely remembers experiencing in his father's presence, a sense of lightness and understanding. He reaches out a hand to Harold, who takes it without hesitation, as if that gesture were the bond needed to repair years of hurt. Harold looks into his son's eyes, and without needing to say anything more, he feels that they are finally ready to let go of the past and stand by each other in the present, where they both still have so much to offer one another. The room is silent after the long exchange between father and son. The tension seems to have given way to a delicate peace, as if, finally, they can both breathe without the weight of old conflicts. But Harold senses that William is still holding something back, a visible worry in his gaze. He decides not to press, but makes it clear he's ready to listen. William takes a deep breath, hesitating, before finally opening up about the last secret he's kept. "Dad, there's something else. Something that's haunted me ever since I got involved in all this mess." He pauses, trying to find the best way to explain. "To pay off my debts, I started taking contracts from people who I now realize are involved in dangerous businesses. I found myself stuck in deals I can't get out of, and every attempt to fix things has only left me more indebted." William's tone is one of controlled despair, but Harold senses the real fear behind his son's words. Harold swallows hard, feeling the weight of this revelation. He tries to stay calm, knowing any impulsive reaction would only make things worse. After a brief silence, he places a hand on his son's shoulder and speaks in a firm yet understanding voice. "Son, what you're telling me is serious, but I'm here. No matter what happens, we'll find a way out of this together." William's gaze is a mix of relief and anguish. For years, he's carried these problems alone, convinced that he would never have his father's support, and now, for the first time, he feels there's someone by his side, willing to face the danger with him. "I know I can't change what I did, Dad, but maybe I can make up for it. If I cooperate with the police, explain what happened. I know I'll face the consequences, but I can't keep running from what I created." Harold feels a bittersweet pride for his son, for finally facing the truth and accepting the price of his actions. At the same time, he feels a mix of fear and resolve. He doesn't want to lose his son again, much less see him pay for a mistake he knows was born from desperation. But he understands that if there's any path to redemption, it's through truth and accountability. Harold nods slowly, offering his support. "I know it's difficult, William, but doing what's right always takes courage. If you're ready to face the consequences, I'll stand by you, and I'll do whatever I can to help." William feels, for the first time, that his father's words are an anchor, holding him steady and ready to face the decisions he's avoided for so long. That night, father and son discuss the next steps with the necessary calm and seriousness. Harold suggests they consult a lawyer so that William can clarify his situation and begin a process of cooperation with the authorities. William, though nervous, feels more determined than ever. The fear of being judged and abandoned by Harold finally fades, and he realizes that, no matter how difficult the future might be, reconciling with his father and the chance to start over make it worth the risk. The next morning, William wakes with a sense of relief he hasn't felt in a long time. He gets up earlier than usual and, passing through the kitchen, finds Harold already awake, drinking a strong cup of coffee, as always. There's something comforting about seeing his father there, calm, as if the years of distance had finally given way to a closeness that needed no words. After a few quiet minutes, William sits at the table beside his father, and without a word, they both know the day will be decisive. With Harold's support, he had decided to follow his father's suggestion to seek guidance from a lawyer. Their conversation with the lawyer left them prepared to face the consequences of a potential confession and cooperation with the authorities. Though the process is intimidating, William feels ready to move forward. In the afternoon, the two walk to the lawyer's office, and William feels strengthened by his father's presence. During the meeting, William completely opens up about everything that has happened over the past few years, detailing the contracts, the people involved, and the reckless decisions that led him to this situation. The lawyer listens attentively and, after understanding the full picture, suggests that William cooperate with the investigation, explaining that this is the only way to seek a fair agreement and reduce the legal consequences. Harold stays beside William, offering discreet but constant support. Each time his son hesitates, he squeezes his shoulder in a silent gesture of encouragement. As they leave the office, William realizes just how much his father has been an anchor throughout this entire process. He feels that, even amid uncertainties, He's finally found a sense of peace in the chaos. A few days later, the meeting with the authorities takes place in a tense setting, but William, with Harold by his side, faces everything with courage. He discloses the details, agrees to cooperate, and shows sincerity in every word. His honesty doesn't go unnoticed, and by the end of the meeting, the agents agree to consider his cooperation in the trial. William knows he still has to face the consequences of his actions, but the feeling of finally being in control of his own life is liberating. As the months go by, William takes on community service as part of the agreement. Harold accompanies him in the beginning, helping him adjust to this new routine. They start meeting regularly, and gradually, they rediscover a bond that, though different from the idealized version, is deep and genuine. Proudly, Harold watches his son rebuild his life, facing his mistakes with dignity and a renewed sense of responsibility. One afternoon, while they're side by side, Harold observes William working with dedication. Feeling that the cycle of hurt has finally been broken, he touches his son's shoulder and says quietly, "You did it, William. I'm proud of who you've become." William looks at his father, his eyes misty, and feels that these words complete what he's spent a lifetime waiting to hear. For the first time, he truly feels he has found what he was searching for: his father's respect and love. Hold your breath for the next exciting story that's sure to surprise you, and so much more. Click now on the video appearing on your screen. See you there.